Fred the movie is technically the reason why I have a YouTube career. Interesting way to start off this video, I know, but let me explain. It's around late 2016, early 2017. I was really sick at the time, and so there wasn't really a whole lot for me to do. One day, I'm on YouTube, and I get recommended a video that had come out fairly recently titled The Fred Movie Trilogy, The Search for the Worst, IHE. Almost instantly, the flashbacks of watching these f***ing movies as a kid kicked in. I started watching the video, and then eventually that led to me watching other videos from the channel behind it. I Hate Everything. I found his videos to be incredibly rewatchable, particularly his Search for the Worst series, in which he would review several bad movies in an attempt to find the worst movie ever made. This continued on into 2018. By that point, I had become a massive fan of his channel, and then one day in April, I decided, you know what, I want to make YouTube videos of my own. My first ever videos were, as to be expected, not very good, not very high quality, but as the years went by, I slowly improved the quality of my videos, and now I am proud of the videos that I put out. I became so inspired by I Hate Everything's The Search for the Worst series around like 2017, 2018, that for a long time, I wanted to make a similar series, except I wanted to look at cartoons instead of movies. And well, look where we are now. Look how that turned out. To make a long story short, my entire YouTube career exists because one time I got recommended a review of the Fred movies, and by extension, I grew up with the Fred movies. Fred the movie is technically the reason why I have a YouTube career. If you were around during the golden age of YouTube in the late 2000s and early 2010s, then there's a strong chance that you know who Fred was. Fred was a character created by Lucas Cruikshank, who started back in 2006. The whole gimmick with Fred was he had an annoyingly high-pitched voice, and yeah, that's pretty much it. There was literally nothing more to these videos. If you weren't around when Fred was popular, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, this is the unfunniest thing ever. And well, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong. You're not wrong on that. No amount of nostalgia can save a Fred, unfortunately. At best, these videos could be guilty pleasures, remnants from a better time for YouTube, but I would never call these videos unironically good or anything like that. Admittedly, nostalgia bias prevents me from 100% hating these videos, 100% acknowledging that they're poorly aged, that sort of thing. Nostalgia bias keeps me from really trashing on these videos, combined with their importance to YouTube history. But I'm not going to act like if you watch these videos today in 2026, they're going to be still funny. They're still going to be funny. They're going to age like fine wine. Nothing like that. But I'm not here to look at how Fred is received nowadays. I'm here to look at how Fred was received back in the early 2010s. Fred was the first YouTube channel ever to reach 1 million subscribers. So for better or worse, Fred is an undeniable part of YouTube history. I don't think a channel that hit what was at the time a historical milestone can just be easily ignored and erased from YouTube history, unfortunately. On a side note, there is something weirdly depressing about the fact that this once massive channel that was famously the first channel to ever get 1 million subscribers on YouTube only has 3 million subscribers today, and that's it. I know that Fred is largely seen as a poorly aged relic of its time, and the channel hasn't uploaded a new video in a decade, not to mention the fact that the last few videos uploaded to the channel barely have anything to do with Fred, but I don't know, I was expecting Fred to have way more than just 3 million subscribers. Oh well, you know what they say, be the change that you want to see in this world. I cannot stress enough just how massively successful Fred was back in the early 2010s. You had a crossover episode with The Annoying Orange, another wildly popular channel at the time whose main gimmick was also obnoxious equals funny. You had a guest appearance from Weezer. I'm sorry. I can't believe this was a real thing that happened. I am still in disbelief that this was something that actually happened. I know that this was back in 2010. This was before Weezer became like the funny meme band or whatever. This was long before that, but it's like, it's still baffling nonetheless, even if this was before they became the funny meme band. Beyond the original videos, you had a short-lived cartoon from 2011 to 2012 that, compared to the other things I'm bringing up here, has mostly fallen into obscurity, failing to garner the infamous reputation that everything else I'm bringing up has. A Nickelodeon series that completely bombed, another Nickelodeon series that had nothing to do with Fred but starred Lucas Cruikshank in it that also completely bombed, and finally, not one, not two, but 3 movies. Yes, an entire trilogy of Fred movies. There are movies out there that should have gotten sequels, but they never did. There are movies out there that got a sequel, but never a 3rd installment, even though they desperately need a 3rd installment. There are movie franchises that are supposed to be trilogies, but they never got that 3rd installment, and they never will. And then Fred over here has 3 movies. Fred was able to get a trilogy of movies. I grew up with all 3 movies, because of course I did. And I own all 3 movies on DVD, because of course I do. Why would I not? My DVD copy of the first Fred movie is extra special because it's a Blockbuster copy. It has the bumpy skin texture that most Blockbuster DVD cases had, and when you open it up, you can see the Blockbuster logo printed onto the case. So this right here is an extra valuable copy of the movie, I guess. I truly am glad to own a Blockbuster copy of Fred the movie on DVD. I truly am glad. Fred the movie is a TV movie that first premiered on Nickelodeon in 2010. Well, at least in the US, it was a TV movie. Apparently, this thing got a fucking theatrical release in the UK. Could you imagine seeing Fred the movie on the big screen? Imagine being a parent, getting dragged by your child to see a guy with a high-pitched voice screaming at the top of his lungs for an hour and 22 minutes. I couldn't find much information about the movie's theatrical release, but I guess it didn't do all that well at the box office, which is like, I mean, wow, I can't believe Fred the movie wasn't a massive box office success, you know? I really thought it had a chance at dethroning Avatar. Okay, but seriously, the fact that this movie wasn't successful at the box office makes me imagine that there were a lot of empty screenings for the movie all across UK movie theaters in 2010. The scenario that I brought up earlier with the dad who's forced to see this on the big screen with their kid, yeah, imagine being the only 2 people in that auditorium watching Fred the movie. The kid is laughing and having the time of his life watching the movie because Fred has a high-pitched voice and he's constantly screaming. And then the dad is just sitting there thinking to himself, you know, maybe it's actually okay to say no to your child sometimes. You don't always have to do what they want you to do. You know, that's just something to take into consideration. Fred the movie heavily expands on a lot of the lore, I guess you can call it, that was established in the original YouTube videos. One of the running gags of the original Fred videos is that he has a massive crush on a girl named Judy, who doesn't like him back, and is instead dating Kevin, this bully character that Fred absolutely hates. And so, the entire movie focuses on Fred trying his hardest to win Judy's heart while avoiding Kevin. Judy, in this movie, is played by Pixie Lott. Never heard of her? I don't blame you. She's a pop singer from the UK. Apparently, she's like actually massively popular in the UK, at least in the early 2010s. She had like several hit songs over there, but here in the States, nada. Absolutely nothing. Which, I mean, isn't exactly a new phenomenon, to be fair. Like, you know Aha. You know Aha, the Take On Me band. Yeah, here in the US, they're only known for that song, and that's it. But in the UK and their native Norway, they are a legitimately popular band with tons of successful albums and hit songs. It's not uncommon for an artist to be a legitimately popular act in their home country, but a one-hit wonder in the US. I'm sure there are artists that are massively popular in the US that have only one hit song or maybe no hit songs at all in the UK. But I feel like with Pixie over here, things are a bit different. It's like, imagine in the UK, you are a legitimately popular artist with tons of hit songs under your belt, and then meanwhile in the US, the only thing that you're known for is f***ing Fred the movie, and that's it. Like, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Holy crap. Okay, so let's talk about the movie itself for real this time. It's the last day of school before the weekend, and everybody's heading home. Our story begins with Fred Figglehorn, our titular main character, stalking and following Judy's car home. Yeah, off to a great start already. Off to a great start. Jesus Christ, man. I mean, I wasn't expecting Fred the movie over here to age like fine wine, but wow, did this thing age badly in a way that I was not expecting it to. Fred arrives home, and for the first quarter or so of the movie, he is talking to us, the audience, very much akin to what he would do in the original YouTube videos, and almost immediately, the Vietnam flashbacks kicked in. I went into this movie expecting to be annoyed by Fred and his high-pitched voice, and yet, more than anything else, the main emotion that I felt for the first half of the movie was embarrassment. Every time there was a moment in the movie where it's like, haha, Fred is screaming and being loud and it's funny and hilarious, guys, I just kept thinking to myself, I watched this as a kid. Not only that, but I've likely forced people in my family to watch this with me as a kid. The UK movie theater scenario I went over earlier, I more or less did the exact same thing, except from the comforts of my home and not at a movie theater, which I guess makes it a little bit less embarrassing, but not by much. It is a little bit reassuring, though, knowing that I'm very likely the only person in my family who remembers this movie. Whatever family member I forced to watch this movie with me as a kid, they very likely don't remember it happening. I mean, this movie came out in 2010. This movie came out 16 years ago. This was an incredibly long time ago. You know, I don't think there's going to be anyone in my family that will remember this movie, the existence of this movie. Even so, that still doesn't change the fact that it happened. The knowledge that it happened is enough to make me feel embarrassed, even if I am the only one that remembers it happening, you know? Like, the first quarter of the movie was a genuine try not to cringe challenge, where I tried to prevent the childhood memories of watching this stupid thing with my family as a kid from, like, affecting the way I watched the movie. I thought it was gonna be like, for other people, the movie is bad because Fred is annoying, and then for me, the movie is bad because it brings back some really embarrassing childhood memories, and that's why I think it's bad. This surprisingly went away after a while. It was only really there for the first quarter of the movie, and that's it. And then eventually it would go away, which is, I'm not gonna lie, kind of a good thing, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, the first half of the movie is dedicated to Fred trying to find a way to Judy's house. The two of them live next door to each other, but unfortunately, Kevin, Fred's longtime bully, lives next to them as well, and is outside dancing. There's a scene where Fred tries to go outside without attracting Kevin's attention, but Kevin confronts him anyways. It's in this scene where I notice something truly unforgivable. In this scene, Kevin is wearing a baseball cap. In some shots, he's wearing the cap backwards. In other shots, he's wearing it forwards. And sometimes, he's wearing it sideways. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe the filmmakers would leave such a blatant continuity error in this film. You know, like it made it unwatchable. It made the movie literally unwatchable. This right here is without a doubt the biggest problem with Fred the movie. I can't believe they would leave something like this in the movie. I can't believe it. What were they thinking? So then Fred tries to get to Judy's house from his backyard. The problem is there is a wall in the way. This wall represents Fred's isolation from the rest of society and his subsequent fall into fascism and... Wait, wrong movie. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. He tries several different ways to get through the wall, ranging from jumping over it via trampoline to digging underground to get through it. He successfully digs to the other side of the wall, and he sees two Asian kids looking at him. And in one of the only unironically funny moments in the movie, he believes that he accidentally dug to China. Yeah, believe it or not, I laughed a considerable amount of times watching this movie. Most of it was ironic, of course, but there were a surprising amount of times I laughed unironically watching this movie. I went into this movie expecting it to be similar to Pixels, an objectively bad movie that I grew up with, and so as a result, I'd look at it as being ironically enjoyable at the very least. Most other people would look at Pixels and Fred the movie and think, wow, these are awful, unfunny, unwatchable movies that have little to no redeeming qualities in them and are a disgrace to cinema as an art form. And I'm like, yeah, it's all of those things. I don't disagree with you, but I grew up with it, so I can't 100% hate it. That's the power of nostalgia, baby. That's the power of nostalgia. The fact that I grew up with this stupid thing makes it funny to me. The knowledge that at one point in my life, this was probably my favorite movie of all time makes it funny. Every time there's a scene where Fred screams and acts loudly and whatever, I end up laughing. Not because it's funny, but because I get reminded that at one point I found it funny unironically. It's like this really weird meta thing that I'm not sure anyone else has ever experienced, let alone for Fred the movie of all things. This movie just has this weird innocence to it. You know, like it came out in 2010, and it may very well be the most early 2010s movie ever made. And it's not just because it's Fred. There's a lot of random cutaway scenes in the movie that don't really serve much purpose whatsoever, and it feels like they're only there to pad out the runtime. And yet, they're strangely charming in an early 2010s way. It really does feel like a time capsule, and not just in the obvious ways. There's a brief cutaway gag where Fred's head falls off his body and rolls on the floor, and it's very obviously a mannequin's head that falls off and rolls on the floor, and Fred's head is tucked underneath his shirt. You know, like, it's so obviously fake, but there's also something charming about it. It's like deliberately campy. There's another scene later on into the movie where Fred is debating on whether or not he should bring ketchup with him on his journey, and then it cuts to a scene where he pretends that he's in a war and there's ketchup being sprayed everywhere, and it's not like a funny or hilarious scene or anything like that. It strikes me as being a good example of the kinda lol random XD style of humor that was prominent in the early 2010s. But I can't bring myself to hate it, damn it. Gamut, I apologize. I cannot bring myself to hate it just because of how weirdly innocent it is. There's a scene where Fred tries to sneak past Kevin to get to Judy's house using an invisibility cloak that he ordered, and at first it seems like the cloak ends up working. Fred is completely invisible, and so he uses that to his advantage to torment Kevin as revenge. And then it's revealed to have been a cutaway scene. Fred puts on the cloak for real. It doesn't actually turn him invisible, but he thinks it does, until he looks in the mirror and he sees that he's not invisible. It's so f***ing stupid that I can't help but laugh at it unironically. I shouldn't find Fred thinking that he's invisible even though he's not. I shouldn't find that funny. and yet I do for some reason. And of course, how could I possibly forget about what is unironically the best thing about these movies? Fred's dad. Now, in the original videos, Fred's dad was a character who was never present at all. I believe, like, the in-universe explanation. I apologize if I got this wrong. I believe it was like Fred's dad was in jail. I don't know, alright? It's been forever, okay? I'm sorry if I got the Fred lore wrong, okay? I truly apologize for that. That's what I remember as a kid. And in the movies, Fred's dad appears as a hallucination, offering advice to Fred. And he's played by... Wait, why does the image just show Fred and that's it? Is there supposed to be someone sitting on the chair? That's weird. I don't know what's up with that. Sorry, folks. Okay, but seriously, John Cena being in these movies, it feels even weirder in hindsight than it did back in the early 2010s, given the fact that now he has a legitimate film career. If there's a movie coming out and he's in it, it's very easy for me to forget, surprisingly, that, oh yeah, his film career started with the Fred trilogy of all things. He was in all 3 movies, and I believe these were his film debuts. That's really interesting. I mean, everyone starts somewhere, I guess. Everyone starts somewhere. Oh yeah, you also have Fred's mom, a deadbeat parent who is very rarely there for him. She's such a non-character in this movie that I see almost no reason to bring her up in this review, and yet I am bringing her up anyways. Getting back on topic, Fred disguises himself in an attempt to avoid Kevin and see what happened to Judy. He ends up seeing Asian people inside of her house through the window, quickly runs back to his house, and now believes that Judy had been kidnapped by Asian people. This, surprisingly, but also thankfully, doesn't take an unintentionally racist turn, because Lord knows, it would be a massive shame if there were poorly aged elements in Fred the movie, don't you think? After that, Fred finds out from his mom that Judy had moved away and throws a massive tantrum about it. Again, I shouldn't find this funny, and yet I do. Not because it's actually funny, but because I get reminded that at one point I thought it was actually funny unironically. The next day, Fred finds out where Judy lives, and so he sets forth on an adventure to find Judy and confess his true feelings to her. He gets on a bus, and as it turns out, it is the wrong bus. It's on this bus where Fred meets, I guess you can say, Durf, this polar opposite character. In contrast to Fred's high-pitched voice and hyperactive personality, Durf has a low-pitched voice and a very laid-back, chill personality. Throughout the bus ride, Fred goes on and on and on about different things in his life to Durf before reaching the last bus stop, in which by that point Durf had mysteriously disappeared. And, yeah, I love Fight Club, guys. Fight Club is such a great movie, am I right? Truly one of the greatest movies ever made. Okay, I had to think deeply about if I wanted to make the Fight Club joke for John Cena or for Durf, and eventually I decided to do it for Durf. I'm still not 100% sure if I made the right decision or not. A bunch of random things then commence. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like everything that happens between now and when Fred actually arrives at Judy's house, it all feels like it just kind of happens and that's it. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how much sense it's gonna make, but that's just the kind of vibe that I get from it. Like rewatching the movie and writing down the script for this review, that's just the kind of vibe that I get from it. Fred goes to a water park and meets up with Bertha. Damn it, I forgot to mention Bertha. Bertha is this goth alternative girl that I guess is Fred's friend, or at least the closest thing that he has to a friend. Yet another character that I don't have much to say about, not yet at least. She's played by Jeanette McCurdy in this movie, and so I don't know how many jokes I could be able to make about this character without having them come off as being in very poor taste. Anyways, Bertha buries Fred in the sand, sand, another hallucination happens where Fred imagines Judy is drowning and Kevin saves her, much to Fred's dismay. This hallucination causes Fred to get up from the sand and continue on with his quest. He stops by a laundromat to wash the sand off his clothes, only to get kicked out for taking off his clothes at a public laundromat. He then stops by a car wash, gets properly washed, and then we get a pointless cutaway scene that's also charmingly early 2010s. He comes across a pet shop selling Pomeranians, except he thinks that they're squirrels. Right, this was a running gag in the original Fred videos. He has these like Pomeranian dogs, and he thinks that they're squirrels. It's just like, it's typical late 2000s, early 2010s lol random humor, okay? Don't put much thought into it, please. Don't put much thought into it. He tries to buy a squirrel for Judy. He's unable to afford it, and so he tries to steal it, which goes about as well as you'd think. After leaving the pet shop, he comes across a Spanish man, and he doesn't understand what the Spanish man is saying, and so he thinks that the Spanish man is a spaceman. Well, so much for this movie not having any unintentionally racist moments in it. You know, it's truly a shame. Truly a shame. I can't believe there is something in Fred the movie that has aged badly today in 2026. That truly is a massive shame. Up until this point, I thought, wow, this movie has aged amazingly. I can't believe it. Everything about this movie has aged like a fine wine in 2026. It's such a shame, guys. It's such a shame. We then cut to something that I'm sure a lot of people wanted to see in this movie. A montage of Fred screaming. He starts running, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs while running. And oh boy, am I glad to have grown up with this movie as a kid. I'm sure everyone in my family had a splendid time watching this scene whenever I forced them to watch this thing with me. I'm sure the eight or so people that went to see this in theaters in the UK were absolutely delighted to have the privilege of watching this scene on the big screen, especially when you imagine the theaters playing this movie being almost completely empty, making the embarrassment of watching Fred the movie on the big screen, the embarrassment of watching Fred screaming at the top of his lungs on the big screen hit even harder. Gammit, I wish us Yankees had the privilege of watching Fred the movie in theaters. Seriously. Okay, there's one actually pretty funny moment in this scene. I will acknowledge that. There is one pretty funny moment where, while Fred is running and screaming, it randomly cuts to him on a green screen roller coaster track, and again, it's just so stupid and absurd. It just feels weirdly innocent. It gives off that heavy early 2010s vibe that I can't help but laugh at it. I'm sorry. So then Fred ends up at this dam, and now he's scared because this means now he has to go through the woods in order to get to Judy. There's this whole thing earlier into the movie where he's scared to go into the woods because a childhood friend of his named Evan Weiss went into the woods to grab a ball and then never came back. Fred heads into the woods, comes across a talking deer because why not? I'm not gonna lie, this is yet another scene where the complete absurdity of it got to me. I particularly like that the deer is an animatronic and not CGI. I will give it that. They went out of their way to create an entire animatronic deer for a scene that lasts about 2 minutes. Now I must wonder where the animatronic deer from Fred the movie is today. This thing should be in a f***ing museum if you ask me. I am very well aware that there is a very obvious joke I can make here in regards to animatronic and Fred, but unfortunately I can't think of any ways to implement this obvious joke without having it feel forced. I apologize for that. After coming across the animatronic deer, Fred finds Evan Weiss all grown up with the ball and he runs away screaming, and that is the last time this subplot is ever really important or relevant to the storyline. You could cut this out of the movie, and I'm pretty sure absolutely nothing would change about it. It is filler with a capital F. It is filler in its purest form. After the extremely crucial Woods subplot, Fred ends up at the bus stop for the right bus. He meets up with Durf again. There's a scene where Fred starts eating sardines, which I'm not gonna show because it's fucking disgusting, and Durf is like, lunch fail, man. And oh my gamut, how much more early 2010s can this movie get? Seriously.
That's what the kids call epic fail.
After all this time, Fred finally gets to Judy's house, confesses how he feels about her, and the two of them start singing together, and psych, the whole thing turns out to be another dream sequence. He gets on the bus for real this time, arrives at Judy's house, and finds out that she's having a party with Kevin and everyone else at Fred's school. Kevin throws a slice of pizza on Fred, and this causes him to vomit for some reason, and then he ends up vomiting on Judy, and much to his dismay, everyone records it happening. He quickly storms out of Judy's house and heads back home, where he finds out the video was uploaded onto YouTube. And this scene right here is the scene that I always think of whenever I go on about the weirdly innocent early 2010s vibe this movie has. This scene perfectly captures the time capsule feel that this movie has. A remnant from a different, much simpler, less corporate time for YouTube. There's this admittedly kind of funny fourth wall break where Fred is like, why would people watch other people on YouTube? It's weird, it's creepy, and you know, it actually is kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie, that actually is kind of funny. But then also as well, there's another continuity error in this scene that only adds to it. In some shots, the video is 51 seconds long, and in other shots, the video inexplicably becomes 34 seconds long. I would make the obvious, literally unwatchable joke, but thinking about it more, seeing the movie fail to be consistent at something as simple as the length of a YouTube video just reeks of incompetence. Alright, I know that this movie had a low budget. I know that it was a TV movie, or at least here in the US it was a TV movie. In UK and their theatrical release, man. Never thought I would ever be jealous of the UK, but here we are. But I feel like that's not really much of an excuse for such a blatant continuity error, you know? Maybe I shouldn't expect professional filmmaking from Fred the movie over here, but I don't care. My point still stands. My point still stands. The next day, as a form of revenge, Fred plans on holding a party that nobody is invited to except for himself. There's this whole unhinged montage where he's giving people these fake invites, letting them know that they're not invited to his party, and it's genuinely the funniest thing I've ever seen, and again, it is because of its complete absurdity. Fred gives Bertha a fake invite. He finds out that she didn't like the video of him at the party, and so subsequently he invites her to stage the fake party with him. What then follows is a montage of the two of them preparing for the fake party in a scene that goes on for what feels like a eternity. By this point, there is less than 20 minutes left of the movie, and so a majority of these final few minutes of the movie is dedicated to them preparing this fake party. It feels like filler. It feels even more like filler than the cutaway scenes, because at least those are just a few seconds long and that's it, and so they don't overstay their welcome. This fake party preparation scene, in comparison, goes on for way too long, and then, as if that wasn't enough, the next morning, Fred is debating on whether or not he should upload the video that he and Bertha made the night before online or not, and then he ends up uploading the video, and then we get another montage of the video that they made, and again, it goes on much longer than it needs to. I remember even as a kid, I would skip out on this ending scene. That should tell you a lot right there. This stupid thing was probably my favorite movie ever as a kid, and even then it was like, no, this ending scene, I'm not gonna watch it. This final, like, stretch of the movie, the last 15 minutes of the movie, I would just completely skip out on. As far as I was concerned, the movie ended with Fred finding the embarrassing video of himself at Judy's party on YouTube. The final 20 minutes of the movie, I would almost never rewatch at all. The final 20 minutes of the movie largely consists of an unnecessarily long montage of Fred and Bertha preparing for the fake party, followed by another unnecessarily long montage of the video that they made for the fake party. It is so boring, seriously. The only redeeming quality that these montages have is, again, the very early 2010s innocence that it has, you know? It makes me think heavily about the party culture that was prevalent in the late 2000s, early 2010s, but that's the only thing that it has going for it. No amount of nostalgia for that time can fix how boring and fillerish these scenes feel. No amount of nostalgia for that time can change the fact that, like, it feels like they drag out these scenes in order to pad out the runtime, and that's it. That's the vibe that I get from these scenes. The next day, everyone at school is like, whoa, Fred is actually pretty cool now that we think about it. You know, you have people wearing shirts of him. You have people going on about how they regret not going. You have people lying about going to the party, that sort of thing. Overnight, Fred becomes the popular cool kid at his school. And so the movie ends with Fred staying home from school, not knowing of his newfound popularity that, by the way, he seemingly loses in the sequels with no explanation given at all. At the time of making this video, I have yet to rewatch Fred 2 or 3, but I do remember Fred being seen as a massive loser again in those two movies, with the newfound respect and fame he has at his school inexplicably disappearing with no explanation given. Maybe they eventually found out the video was fake. I don't know, honestly. Anyways, Fred stays home from school. He gets a knock on the front door, and it's Judy who wants to sing with him. Rather than learn his lesson and reject her, Fred invites her in, and the movie ends with Fred finally getting the girl of his dreams. You know, it was after I rewatched this movie for the first time in who knows how many years that I realized, with the direction this movie was heading, between Fred feeling betrayed by Judy at her party and the subsequent fake party he would do with Bertha, I realize now it would have made more sense for Fred to move on from Judy, to reject Judy, and end up with Bertha instead. I don't want to start shipping discourse for Fred the movie of all things over here. Lord knows I'm probably the last person in the world to care about shipping discourse in any capacity, but think about it. Bertha is more or less the only real friend that Fred has. He invites her to stage this fake party as a form of revenge, and the two of them are shown to have a fun time preparing and filming the fake party. This could have been an unironically great opportunity for Fred to realize that stalking and obsessing over Judy, or any girl for that matter, is wrong and unhealthy. It would have been great character development for Fred, and instead, the movie just cowardly ends with him getting what he wanted in the first place. Him getting together with Judy after everything we have seen with this character. Friendly reminder, this movie literally opens up with him stalking Judy on the way home from school. Am I overanalyzing this? Am I entering super serious Family Guy territory? I don't know. That's just the vibe that I get from this. It's such a questionable message for this movie to have, especially since, again, this is supposed to be a dumb kids movie. As I was rewatching this movie, I couldn't stop thinking about how this could very easily be remade into a much darker movie. Like, think about it, okay? Think about it. Hear me out. You have this outcast loner who has almost no friends at school. Everyone thinks he's a loser. The only friend that he has is seemingly only friends with him because she feels bad for him. His mom is a deadbeat alcoholic who is very rarely there for him, and his dad is completely absent. He frequently hallucinates his dad giving advice to him, when in reality he's just giving the advice to himself. He also hallucinates, I guess you could interpret this as being like a more ideal version of himself, the kind of person that he wishes he could be. Unironic Fight Club parallels over here. Holy shit. Oh my gamut, you know. I was joking initially, but thinking about it more, I could actually see the Fight Club parallels 100% unironically right here. I could actually see it. He has a massive crush on the popular girl at his school, and his love for this girl very quickly becomes a concerningly unhealthy obsession. Unfortunately, the girl doesn't like him back and is instead dating the bad boy bully jock character, the Chad, if you will. Among the many hallucinations he would also frequently hallucinate the girl of his dreams and the Chad, sometimes imagining himself with the girl of his dreams with something bad happening to the Chad, and sometimes imagining the Chad with the girl of his dreams, only further fueling his anger. He arrives at this party that the girl of his dreams is having without being invited, has something humiliating happen to him, and is finally faced with the harsh reality that nobody likes him and that everybody, including the girl of his dreams, thinks that he's a massive loser. Yeah, I think you understand where I'm going with this. All I'm gonna say is, this alternate version of the movie wouldn't have its final 20 minutes consist of Fred staging a fake party. It would have consisted of something much, 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 much darker, if you know what I mean. Yo, somebody get A24 on the line. I think I might have the next art house cult classic right here. You know, people go on about how Megamind was ahead of its time when it came to like Titan, and how he was like this incel nice guy before incel nice guys existed. But I think Fred over here has Titan beat. Megamind was released in November of 2010, while Fred the movie was released in September of 2010, 2 months beforehand. And that's not even getting into like the older Fred videos on YouTube from like 2008 to 2009 that very likely also highlight Fred's creepy obsession with Judy. Fred Figglehorn, the original incel. If you ask me, I find Fred the movie to be a very overlooked installment of the Literally Me canon, you know? It's such a shame, as I think it would fit in quite perfectly with other Literally Me movies. Like just look at this. It doesn't stand out whatsoever. It fits right in. Tell me that it stands out. I dare you. Tell me that it stands out. Oh yeah, I did some research on this as well. I did research on this, and as it turns out, Lucas Cruikshank himself, the guy who started Fred, the guy who plays Fred, in real life he is gay. He came out as gay in 2013, and so the whole thing of Fred being unhealthily obsessed with this girl, with Judy, becomes even more badly aged than it already was. And now it makes me realize there is an entirely different, much more wholesome way that you could remake this movie. A coming-of-age comedy drama about a boy who has a massive crush on the popular girl at his school, and for the first quarter of the movie, he tries his absolute hardest to win her heart. And then, as the movie progresses further, he slowly realizes not only does he not actually love her, but he's also not straight. He slowly becomes more accepting and understanding of the fact that she doesn't love him back, and continues to discover more about himself and who he really is, who he was actually meant to be. Wait, Legit, I think I might be cooking with this. I think I might have something unironically good on my hands, I'm not gonna lie. And there you have it, folks. Fred the movie. A movie that is in many ways of its time, but in many other ways ahead of its time. I'm not gonna lie, this movie was surprisingly much more tolerable than I expected it to be. It's obviously a bad movie objectively, and yet I found myself laughing several times watching the movie. Most of it was ironic, of course, but there were instances where I unironically laughed watching the movie, which I was not expecting whatsoever. The embarrassment that I felt early on into the movie of having watched this thing as a kid made the movie pretty hard for me to sit through at first, but I surprisingly got over it fairly quickly. I expected to be highly annoyed watching this movie, and instead, I felt a mixture of embarrassment, ironic enjoyment, and highly questionable nostalgia. Are there any redeeming qualities to this movie? Yes, surprisingly, there are. Despite the very creepy nature of his character, Fred is surprisingly not as annoying as I expected him to be, which only now do I realize how up that sounds out of context. Yeah, he might be a creepy loser who has an unhealthy obsession with this girl at his school, but at least he's not annoying, you know? Try and focus on the positive side of things, folks. Try and focus on the positive side. I don't know if it's because I grew up with this movie and the original YouTube videos, but I think I am more tolerant of Fred's annoying nature than most other people are. Again, going back to the whole I grew up with it, so I don't think it's as bad as other people think it is mentality that I have with this and Pixels. I feel like if I didn't grow up with this movie, if I didn't grow up watching the original Fred videos, I would hate this character more. I would find him completely insufferable. The fact that I watched this as a kid, and not only that, the fact that I found this funny as a kid, I think makes it more tolerable for me than for most other people. Whenever Fred screams in this movie, I laugh, not because it's funny, but because I get reminded that at one point I thought it was funny. It's like I can acknowledge, yeah, this movie is objectively bad and poorly aged, but I don't feel the effects of it as strongly as other people do. And again, the fact that I found this movie funny at one point, the fact that I found Fred in general funny at one point, I think is funny in of itself. On a side note, included on the DVD as bonus features are 2 Fred videos. One that was made for the DVD, I guess, and one from YouTube. I decided to watch both of them for the hell of it after I finished watching the movie. I'm pretty sure it was like 4 a.m. by that time, I don't know. I just wanted nothing more than to sleep, and instead, I was over here watching Fred on my TV, and wow, did they tone down the annoying nature of Fred for the movie. I'm not gonna play the audio from either of the videos or anything like that because I don't hate my audience, but oh my gamut, am I glad they toned down Fred's annoyingness in the movie. Seriously, I went back to some of the older Fred videos on YouTube for this review, and Jesus Christ, can Fred get pretty grating pretty quickly. So that is a massive positive right there. The fact that in general, Fred as a character is not as insufferable as he was in the original YouTube videos. Not to mention as well, this movie can actually be funny unironically from time to time, which I was surprised by that. I was completely surprised. I went into this thinking I would either not laugh whatsoever, or I would laugh, but it would only be ironically, because of the sheer humiliation I feel of having grown up with this movie. but I was not expecting the movie to occasionally be unironically funny. There are moments where I laughed watching this movie. There are moments where I weirdly embraced the stupid nature of this movie. Something like Fred's dad is John Cena. Like I find that funny. The whole like, oh my gamut, I dug all the way to China. Like that's funny to me, unironically. The aforementioned scene at the water park where Fred hallucinates Judy drowning and Kevin saving her, and it's like the way it's edited. It's like the two of them break into song, and then it immediately cuts to Fred screaming, and I don't know why, but it makes me laugh. It's genuinely unironically funny. You know, there's the roller coaster green screen. There's like the talking animatronic deer. There's the unhinged montage of Fred giving people these fake invites, letting them know that they're not invited to his party. It's just like, this movie can actually be funny unironically from time to time. I can't believe it. I laughed watching this unironically more than I expected going into it. It's crazy to me. I feel like a lot of it comes from the very, like, the weirdly innocent early 2010s vibe that this movie has. You know, it's like the quirky, lol, random style of humor, the talking deer, the whole thing of like, oh, Pomeranians are actually squirrels. You know, that sort of thing. The heavy emphasis on parties near the end of the movie. It all just screams at 2010. Even if this wasn't based on a YouTuber that was popular at the time, I would still look at this movie as being a perfect representation of the early 2010s in movie form. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of things that completely drag this movie down. I can't believe it. I expected Fred the movie to be an absolute work of art on par with The Godfather and Casablanca, and instead I get a terrible movie. What's up with that, man? What's up with that? The straight up creepy and unhinged obsession that Fred has with Judy did make me laugh because of how badly aged it is, but then I easily imagine like an alternate universe where like I watched this movie as a kid, and then there's like a girl at my school that I have like a crush on, I don't know, and then I end up copying Fred's behavior with that hypothetical girl, and then suddenly it stops being awkwardly funny. It doesn't even have to be me. I could easily imagine like a stupid kid watching this and they have a crush on a girl at their school, and so they try to like mimic Fred's behavior towards Judy. They try to like emulate that in real life, and it just, that's when like the cringe starts to kick in even more. There's also several things in the middle part of the movie during Fred's epic journey to find Judy where it feels like it's all just kind of happening simply for the sake of happening. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how much sense any of this is going to make, but like the water park scene, the laundromat scene, the car wash scene, and the pet shop scene all feel like they just kind of happen and that's it. And that's not even getting into like the woods subplot with Evan Weiss that literally serves no purpose whatsoever to the movie or its storyline, and it could very easily be cut out. There's a lot of cutaway scenes in the movie that just feel like filler. It feels like they're only there just to pad out the runtime, and you especially feel this with the fake party scenes near the end of the movie. I'm not joking. I would stop watching the movie whenever I got to this scene as a kid. I would be like, okay, the movie ends with Fred finding the embarrassing video of himself on YouTube. That's it. I'm done watching Fred the movie. It's like I would stop watching the movie after that because even as a kid, I knew that this whole montage was a waste of time. I went back to it for this video while editing it, and it's like both montages are only about like 3 minutes each, but it feels like they go on for a fucking eternity. It feels like they go on for much longer than needed. The ending scene of the movie completely destroys any potential character development Fred could have had by just giving him what he wanted for the entire movie. It's supposed to feel earned and deserved, and it just doesn't, because throughout the whole movie we see how much of a fucking weirdo Fred is when it comes to Judy. And it's like, I get that it's played for laughs, and again, admittedly, it's funny because of how awkward and badly aged it is, but that still doesn't make it acceptable. Again, you could very easily remake this into a much darker, much more disturbing movie. I guarantee it. Overall, though, this movie is obviously bad, but I found it to be enjoyably bad. A movie that is only good ironically. It is a little bit of an acquired taste, though. You have to have grown up with this piece of shit and be ready to accept the humiliation of watching such a movie in your childhood in order to truly appreciate this movie the way that I do. You know, of the many movies that I have reviewed on this channel, I think this is probably one of the better ones I've reviewed on ironically, which, thinking about that now, I find that to be incredibly depressing. I need to review more good movies. I know. That being said, though, this is still the first movie in a trilogy. Even if this one was at least ironically enjoyable and occasionally unironically enjoyable, believe it or not, I'm not sure I'll be as lucky with the other two movies. I remember when I was a kid, this was easily my favorite movie of the trilogy, so I feel like that's a massive red flag right there in regards to the sequels. Not to mention, again, I haven't rewatched either movie yet at the time of making this video, but I remember not liking Fred 3 Camp Fred all that much even when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was like, wow, this fucking sucks. This movie is terrible, actually. So it's like, whatever ironic nostalgia I might have for the first movie, and hopefully the second movie, it's going to be completely absent in the third one. The first two movies I would watch all the time as a kid. Fred 3 Camp Fred, I would just be like, no, I would almost never watch it at all. I would almost never watch it. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to Fred 3 Camp Fred. I'm not looking forward to it at all. I look at this movie, the first Fred movie, I look at it as being like, I guess a guilty pleasure, maybe the guiltiest of guilty pleasures, which now I must wonder, how guilty can a guilty pleasure be? What's the point where it's like, it stops being a guilty pleasure, and then it becomes like, no, you just have bad taste, and that's it, you know? Like, what's the point? When is the line crossed? I want to know. Whatever, that's beside the point. The first movie I look at as being like a funny, bad, ironically enjoyable, guilty pleasure, and then the sequels, I imagine, are going to be the unwatchable dog shit that I expected the first one to be, going back to it after all these years. Needless to say, I am not looking forward to watching the sequels at all. I am not looking forward to them whatsoever. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios. Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred, is a massive downgrade from the first Fred movie, and I say that 100% unironically, believe it or not. So in my previous video, I went over the beloved 2010 classic Fred the Movie, a movie that is, by all accounts, objectively terrible, and yet I had a surprising amount of fun watching it. A lot of that fun came from the fact that I had the misfortune of growing up with this movie as a kid, and so as a result, there was this strange, ironic nostalgia that I felt watching the movie. A lot of times I would actually laugh watching the movie, not because it was legitimately funny, but because I constantly got reminded of the fact that I found it legitimately funny as a kid. To my surprise, though, on rare occasions, the movie could also be unironically funny from time to time. The whole movie has this early 2010s charm to it, and not just from the fact that it's a movie based on Fred. I feel like this early 2010s vibe that the movie has makes it harder for me to 100% hate this movie, even if it is objectively bad in many ways, you know? It gives it that sort of like time capsule feel. I don't know how to describe it. Fred the movie is more or less a guilty pleasure for me. Maybe the guiltiest of pleasures. Unfortunately, though, it ended up getting not one but two sequels, and before I even watched either sequel, I knew that they were far less likely to retain the fun, bad, guilty pleasure feel of the first movie. I found it highly unlikely that lightning would strike twice or three times, unfortunately. And so today we're looking at Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred, the second installment in the greatest movie trilogy ever made, the Fred Trilogy. As with the first movie, I have childhood memories of watching Night of the Living Fred all the time as a kid, much to my family's annoyance. I shouldn't be surprised at all that the luck I had with the first movie would run out with the second movie, and yet I am. The movie begins, and it becomes very apparent very quickly that this is going to be considerably harder to sit through than the first movie, because Fred's voice in this movie is much higher pitched than it was in the first movie. Now, as most of you know, Fred's main gimmick back in the day was he had an annoyingly high-pitched voice, and that's it. And to give a massive amount of credit to the first movie, they toned down the annoying high-pitched nature of this character. I watched the first movie, and then I watched these two Fred videos that are included on the DVD as bonus features, and wow, did they heavily tone down the obnoxious nature of Fred as a character for the first movie. Sadly, though, they did not do the same thing for Night of the Living Fred over here. Now his voice is much higher pitch, akin to how it was in the original YouTube videos. The only sort of explanation that I have for this is Lucas Cruikshank, the guy behind Fred, was likely going through puberty at the time. I believe he was 17 or so when the first movie came out, and so I want to imagine his voice had probably gotten deeper in the time between the first movie and this movie, and so they had to further pitch up his voice for this movie to accommodate this, much to our dismay. Yeah, obviously, this is obviously, you know, because there's no footage being played of the movie, there's no, like, footage whatsoever, it's just screenshots and that's it. I can't convey this properly, but, like, watching the first movie and then watching this movie, it's like, it's very noticeable the difference between this character in the first movie versus in the second movie. Anyways, the movie begins with Fred going over what happened with him and Judy. Again, as mentioned in the review for the first movie, one of the running gags of the original Fred YouTube videos was that he had a massive crush on a girl named Judy, and this was further expanded upon in the first movie, to a very creepy, unhinged extent, I might add. And as it turns out, all of this, everything that happened in the first movie, was for fucking nothing. The movie opens up with Fred going over how he has moved on from Judy, and then we cut to this Casablanca parody scene that, like, yeah, I'm sure the 8-year-olds watching this on Nickelodeon in 2011 will definitely understand the Casablanca reference. Why is there even a Casablanca reference in fucking Fred 2 of all things in the first place? I mean, to be fair, that's not even the weirdest movie to be referenced in any of these movies. I forgot to mention this when reviewing the first movie, but there's a scene in the first movie where Fred is taking a bath, and you could see, like, bacon taped onto the wall, and it's like not once does he ever acknowledge it or anything like that. It's just there in the background, and apparently this is a reference to a 90s indie movie called Gummo, which I have never seen this movie. I don't know a single thing about this movie. It's like a weird, messed up movie from what I've heard, from what little I know of it. I don't doubt that it is a great movie. I'm sure that it's an amazing movie, but like that's the most I know about it. It's an indie movie from the 90s. Apparently it's like weird and messed up and whatever. I mean, just looking at this poster alone, this doesn't really seem like the kind of movie that would be referenced in Fred the movie, and yet somehow it is. So, Fred 2 referencing Casablanca isn't really all that weird now that I think about it. In the first movie, Judy was played by popular in the UK but completely unknown in the US besides Fred the movie pop star Pixie Lott. And according to the IMDb page for Fred 2, her agency wouldn't allow her to return to any future Fred movies. I am taking this information with a grain of salt, as I couldn't find any direct, official proof of this or anything like that. I couldn't find any sources for this, but if this is true, then this is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Assuming this is true, I doubt that this would be the reason why, but I just imagine her agents or whatever telling her not to do any more of these movies because of how awful they are, and I can't stop laughing at the idea of that. I'm sorry. Yeah, they couldn't even get her back for this Casablanca parody, and so they just have Lucas dress up in drag and play both Fred and Judy. I don't doubt the possibility that they deliberately did this for comedic purposes, but I also feel like this just comes off as being hilariously cheap, The whole movie feels even more like a cheap TV movie than the first one in general. The first movie was a TV movie. Well, at least in the US it was a TV movie. Somehow this thing was able to get a theatrical release in the UK. And then Fred 2 over here, TV movie everywhere, worldwide. And it shows. The cheap TV movie vibe somehow feels even more obvious in this movie than in the first movie, which is made even more baffling by the fact that, again, take this with a grain of salt, I'm getting this from the movie's IMDb trivia page. Apparently, this was supposed to be a theatrical movie, with the movie even being filmed with 3D cameras for a potential 3D release. And I cannot see this movie. I cannot imagine this movie being on the big screen. Surprisingly, I could see it a tiny bit for the first movie. This movie right here, no, I just don't see it. I'm basing all of this off of vibes. That's just the vibe that I get from this movie. I cannot imagine this being on the big screen. I cannot imagine seeing this on the big screen. I guess there are remnants of the movie being in 3D sprinkled throughout, but as far as I'm aware, there's no alternate 3D version of the movie or anything like that. It either doesn't exist at all, or it does exist, but it's lost media. If it's the latter, well, you know what to do, boys. You know what to do. So then Fred goes on about how the teacher that he has for music class, this elderly woman, had suddenly been replaced by a mysterious man, Mr. Devlin. As if that wasn't enough, every day after school, Fred continuously gets followed by a mysterious girl that he doesn't know. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Talia, a character who I guess is supposed to be Judy's replacement for this movie. Throughout the movie, Talia is shown trying to get closer and closer to Fred, creeping him out in the process. She makes this Fred-themed cookie for him. She makes sock puppets of her and Fred. You get the idea. And it creeps Fred out. See, now, if these movies had good, competent writing, then this could have been the perfect opportunity to have some kind of character development for Fred. He's creeped out and uncomfortable with everything Talia is doing. He's creeped out by Talia following him home from school every day, even though at the very beginning of the first movie, we see him do the exact same thing with Judy. I guess this could maybe be the reason why he moved on from Judy, and the in-universe reason why Judy doesn't appear in this movie, but at no point when going over how Talia creeps him out does he ever acknowledge that he was essentially doing the same thing to Judy in the first movie, that he was essentially the same way to Judy in the first movie. I feel like I'm asking for way too much out of this movie, honestly. I don't know why I'm treating this like I'm reviewing an actual proper movie and not Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just can't help it. I'm sorry. I can't help it. And surprise, surprise, this character serves no purpose to the movie whatsoever. This character contributes almost nothing important to the movie storyline. Early on, it's revealed that, plot twist, she's actually Kevin's sister. Kevin being this longtime bully enemy of Fred, and very conveniently, this character is never seen or acknowledged once in the first movie, and it's almost never important or relevant to the storyline that she is Kevin's sister. Given the fact that she more or less replaces Judy from the first movie, you would think that she'd end up being Fred's love interest, and then that ends up not happening at all. I mean, it's not like the movie would be any better if she was Fred's love interest, but like, it's weird to me. This is the only movie in the trilogy to feature this character, by the way. From what little I remember of Fred 3 Camp Fred, she is never brought up or even acknowledged once in the movie, making her character feel even more pointless. They introduce this character early on into the movie, and then after a while this character appears again, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a character that's in the movie. I completely forgot about her, and so I make an early prediction that this character is going to contribute nothing of importance to the storyline of the movie. You could cut this character out of the movie, and absolutely nothing would change about it. And, well, I was mostly right on that. Emphasis on mostly. You'll see what I mean when I get there. Anyways, we cut to Fred walking home from school with Bertha, and wait a minute, something's not right. Something feels off. Okay, so for some context, Bertha is Fred's friend, or at least the closest thing that he has to a friend. She's like this alternative goth punk girl or whatever, I don't know. In the first movie, she was played by Jeanette McCurdy of iCarly fame, and in this movie and Fred 3, as well as the short-lived Fred the Show, she is played by somebody else. She's played by one of the girls from Victorious. I don't know, one of the girls. There were like five girls in Victorious. I've never actually seen Victorious. There were like 4 to 5 girls in Victorious. One of them was Ariana Grande. The others have just completely fell off the face of the earth, and Bertha in all subsequent Fred media is played by one of the girls that has fallen off the face of the earth. I don't know, okay? I really don't know. Now, I know I'm skating on thin ice with what I'm about to say. I understand it is impossible for me to address the elephant in the room regarding this character in the first movie versus this character in the second movie without also addressing the much bigger, much darker elephant in the room regarding the actress that played this character in the first movie. But this recasting does not work. I understand how idiotic this is. I'm criticizing the recasting of a character in the Fred movies, but looking at the character of Bertha and who she's supposed to be, this recasting doesn't fit with her character at all. Bertha is supposed to be a very sarcastic and moody character, and in the first movie, Jeanette McCurdy portrays that perfectly. Again, I know, elephant in the room, I know. That doesn't mean I can't also acknowledge that she perfectly portrays the sarcastic attitude that this character is supposed to have, and then Victorious Girl over here doesn't convey that as much, and so it doesn't work as well. The juxtaposition that the first movie had, where Fred is like this weirdo loser that nobody likes, and Bertha is like this sarcastic alternative girl who is somehow friends with him, is completely missing in this movie. I barely laughed watching this movie, ironically and unironically. As I mentioned before, the first movie made me laugh a surprising amount of times. Most of it was ironic, but there were a few rare unironically funny moments in the movie, and then with Fred 2 over here, I barely laughed watching this movie. There's like one funny moment early on into the movie where we see Fred and the others attending Mr. Devlin's music class, and Kevin is wearing this shirt that just says me on it, and below the me text there's like a Facebook-esque notification that says like 11,000 people or whatever like this. And as soon as I noticed it, I couldn't stop laughing. The first movie, as mentioned before, had this very early 2010s charm to it, and not just from the fact that it was a movie based on Fred. There's a lot of cutaway gags in the movie that, although they don't serve much purpose to the storyline of the movie, give off that weird early 2010s innocence, you know? It all felt like the kind of thing that I would find on YouTube around that time. I don't know. And then this is yet another thing that is sadly absent from Fred 2 over here. There are cutaway gags in this movie, but they don't retain that early 2010s vibe. I don't know how to describe it, okay? The whole movie just lacks that vibe in general. I look at the first movie and I think, oh yeah, this was released in 2010, and it definitely shows. And then I look at this movie and I think, wow, this came out in 2011. Yeah, I'm not really feeling that 2011 vibe from this movie. I mean, to be fair, at the same time, I cannot see this movie coming out in any year of the 2020s. I can't see it coming out this year in 2026 or anything like that, so do what you will with that information. This shirt is like the only remnant of that early 2010s charm that the first movie had in this movie. It just reminds me of those really stupid kids shirts from the early 2010s, all about things that were considered awesome and epic, like video games, versus things that were considered lame and uncool, like homework. And it especially confuses me because Kevin is supposed to be like 16 years old. I don't know, and this is a shirt that like a 9 or 10-year-old would wear around that time period in the early 2010s. It's like this is like this is like too immature of a shirt for like what's supposed to be like a 16-year-old. I don't know, like I cannot imagine a 16-year-old in any time period, not even in the early 2010s, wearing this, which only makes it even funnier if you ask me. This is unfortunately the funniest thing in this movie. And again, it's pretty early on into the movie. The rest of the movie, I barely laughed. I very rarely laughed. Getting back to the plot, as the movie progresses forward, Fred becomes more and more convinced that Mr. Devlin is actually a vampire. There's this brief cutaway gag that parodies Twilight, and wow, so much for the whole this movie lacks that early 2010s vibe that the first movie had thing. You know, there you go. You got a fucking Twilight parody in this movie. It's not even like a Twilight bad parody or anything like that. It parodies Twilight, but it's not making fun of it. The joke is not, haha, Twilight sucks, Twilight is lame. No, nothing like that. And that really surprises me, I'm not gonna lie. On a side note, this whole scene reminds me of when I was a kid growing up on the internet in the early 2010s, and I would be obsessed with rage comics and memes and whatever that were just Justin Bieber bad, Twilight bad, that sort of thing. And I remember finding this one Twilight bad meme. Now, I want to clarify something. I don't doubt that Twilight is indeed legitimately bad. I've never seen any of the movies. I've never seen any of them. Lord knows I have much better things to do with my life than watch the Twilight movies, such as watching the Fred movies, obviously. I don't doubt that Twilight is genuinely bad, but the many Twilight bad rage comics and memes and whatever that people would make back then aren't really all that better. A lot of these old memes have the same thing of, I laugh at them not because they're actually funny, but because I get reminded that I found them unironically funny at one point. And so, one time, many years ago, I remember scrolling through Google Images looking for funny and hilarious Twilight bad memes, and I found this one image that was like, it was one of the Twilight books, and on the front cover was a sticky note, and the note said, spare toilet paper, or something along those lines. And I remember thinking this was the funniest image I had ever seen. I remember wanting to show this image to my mom, but then I got scared that I would get in trouble if I showed it to her for some reason, and so I ended up not showing her the image at all. Fast forward to many years later, and I cannot find this image anywhere. No matter how hard I look, no matter where I look, I am unable to find this image. I look up Twilight sucks memes, I get a lot of images that are like, for some reason there was this whole push back then of like, Harry Potter is good, Twilight is bad, which is like, You know, if you ignore the elephant in the room, I don't doubt that that is true. But it just feels like a precursor to the whole Fortnite bad, Minecraft good bullcrap that the internet would do near the end of the 2010s. I end up getting a lot of questionable nostalgia looking at some of the images when looking up Twilight Sucks memes, but no matter what, I cannot find this one specific image. I'm pretty sure that this image is actually f***ing lost media. I can't believe it. I mean, I could recreate the image myself. I could buy a copy of Twilight and then get a sticky note and write down spare toilet paper or whatever on it, and it's like, there you go. I own this image. Now it's in my possession. I own a physical version of this stupid early 2010s meme that is lost media. I don't know. I just wanted to use this Twilight parody as an excuse to talk about this stupid Twilight bad meme from the early 2010s that I thought was funny as a kid that I am now unable to find anywhere on the internet. Okay, that's how I am, man. That's how I am. Anyways, John Cena is back as Fred's imaginary dad who offers him advice. I still can't believe that they were not only somehow able to get him in the first movie, but also have him reprise the role for the second and third movies. The few unironically funny moments that the first movie had mostly came from him, and I guess that is still the case for this movie, but not to the same extent. I think the novelty of haha Fred's dad is John Cena is largely gone now. It's not as funny the second time around, unfortunately. Probably the funniest thing to come out of his appearances in this movie is this entire dream sequence where we have Fred and John Cena face off against Kevin and Mr. Devlin in a fucking WWE wrestling ring, and it's like an actual WWE ring. I know for sure this movie had a low budget, so I'm amazed that they were somehow able to get the WWE ring and film a scene in it. I mean, the scene serves no purpose whatsoever to the storyline. It goes on for a while, and it ultimately comes off as being filler, but now I must wonder, how in the world were they able to get the WWE ring for this scene? Was this like a promotional thing that they filmed for the movie in the middle of an actual wrestling event, match, whatever, that was going on at the time? This is very clearly not a green screen or anything like that. So is the crowd in the background during this scene just extras that they got for this scene? Or are they people that went in expecting an actual wrestling match? I feel like I'm overanalyzing this. I'm putting way too much thought into a scene that serves no purpose to the movie's plot, isn't very funny, and goes on for much longer than needed. This scene is just there for the sake of being there. It's only there to pad out the runtime, and that's it. After that, we cut to Fred and Bertha at school, in which, before we see them, we get an establishing shot of the school, and it is very obviously reused footage from the first movie. If you look closely, you can see Judy, you know, a character who is supposed to be completely absent from this movie. Top quality filmmaking right there. They were able to get John Cena back and even film an entire scene in a WWE wrestling ring, but they couldn't film a new establishing shot for Fred's school. Very interesting stuff right there. Anyways, Fred is becoming increasingly more convinced that Mr. Devlin is a vampire and that he's corrupting the minds of everyone around Fred. His mom starts dating Mr. Devlin, Bertha and Talia start taking piano lessons at his house in preparation for the upcoming school recital, etc. And so Fred realizes that he's all on his own when it comes to taking down Mr. Devlin. He starts doing research on vampires. We get the basic stuff of, oh, they can't be in direct sunlight, in which every time Mr. Devlin is outside, he's carrying an umbrella. They have no reflection when standing in front of a mirror. They hate garlic and crosses. You get the idea. What follows is Fred preparing to stop Mr. Devlin at the school recital. He steals a sign out in public, intending to use it as a cross. There's a small cameo in this scene from Durf, the polar opposite imaginary friend that Fred has, Tyler Durfden, if you will. I am so sorry for that joke, if you can even call it a joke. This is the only scene in the movie that Durf appears in. I don't know how much sense this is gonna make, but I get fan service vibes from Durf's only appearance in this movie. It's a cameo, basically. A cameo for a character that already barely appeared in the first movie and didn't really contribute much to the first movie's storyline. I don't know. He goes to a Chinese restaurant and attempts to order garlic sauce. The people at the restaurant are confused at Fred only wanting garlic sauce, and they don't know what vampires are, and yeah, I get mild unintentionally racist vibes from this scene, I'm not gonna lie. Are all of these movies gonna have an unintentionally racist scene in them? Like, I know these movies are poorly aged, but I wasn't expecting them to be poorly aged this way. And then we cut to Fred heading to the recital. He stops at the entrance, pulls out a master blaster as he calls it, and holy shit. How did they film this scene and not realize that this looks like something completely different from what they intended? Jesus Christ, I don't even know what I could say for this, honestly. It speaks for itself. He goes inside, and as it turns out, Fred was right all along. Mr. Devlin and Kevin are actually vampires who will turn everyone in the auditorium into vampires, and so Fred sprays them with garlic sauce, evaporating them, and then he saves the day, and yeah, this was another dream sequence. He goes inside for real this time, starts spraying Mr. Devlin and Kevin with the garlic sauce, and surprise, surprise, nothing happens to them. He starts spraying the audience in order to protect them, before finally realizing that nothing is happening and that he looks like a complete idiot. I can't help but find Fred to be considerably more unlikable in this movie than in the first movie, which is saying a lot because he literally stalks a girl home from school in the first movie. He is shown to have an unhealthy crush on a girl in the first movie, and yet somehow I find him to be even more irritating and unlikable in this movie than in the first movie. I think it has to be the higher pitch voice. I think that plays a part in this illusion that he's more unlikable in this movie than in the first movie. I feel like I am way more generous towards the first movie than most people are, and I guarantee that if Fred's voice was much higher pitch in the first movie, like it was in the original YouTube videos, or in the second and third movies, I wouldn't be anywhere near as generous towards the first movie as I currently am. The next day, nothing happens to Fred at all. He publicly humiliates himself in an auditorium. He starts spraying students and teachers and whatever at this recital, and nothing happens. He doesn't get suspended, he doesn't get expelled, he doesn't get detention, nothing like that. He's just walking through school like nothing happened the night before. He gets made fun of by Kevin and his friends, but that's about it. He doesn't have like detention or anything like that. It's really weird. I don't know what's up with that. Anyways, getting back on topic, Mr. Devlin invites Fred over to his house for dinner. Fred is initially scared until he realizes that he could use this opportunity to secretly stream himself in Mr. Devlin's house, exposing him as a vampire once and for all. He arrives at his house later that night, begins the live stream, and everyone at Fred's school starts watching the live stream. As Fred is secretly streaming, he comes across all kinds of weird things that are in Mr. Devlin's house, including this secret kitchen with all kinds of strange meat and whatever. Mr. Devlin appears out of nowhere behind Fred, scaring him and causing him to drop his phone into a pot of water, effectively ending the stream and creeping out anyone that watched it. As Fred starts having dinner with Mr. Devlin, he starts to learn more about him. Early into the movie, there's this whole thing where like he's spying on him from his backyard, and he sees him burying something, and he believes that it was a body that Mr. Devlin buried. And as it turns out, this was actually for a traditional Korean meal that needs to grow in the ground or something like that. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Korean culture whatsoever. All of the weird things that Fred finds in Mr. Devlin's house, it's part of his fascination with Korean culture. There's like this outfit that he wears in the dinner scene that like it looks like a vampire outfit. It looks like something a vampire would wear, and I guess it's like an ancient like traditional Korean like outfit. I have no idea. And what I find weird though about this scene is the fact that like at the beginning of this movie, Fred goes on about the music teacher that he had before Mr. Devlin, who was like this elderly woman. Something worth bringing up as well is that she had a pet cat, and in one of the spying scenes, Fred sees this woman's cat alongside part of her clothing, making him believe that Mr. Devlin murdered his original music teacher. And in this scene where Fred starts learning more about Mr. Devlin, it is never once brought up or acknowledged why Mr. Devlin has this woman's cat or a piece of her clothing or anything like that. Fred never questions it. We never see the cat once in this scene. Nothing like that. What happened to the original music teacher in the first place is never explained. In the beginning, when Mr. Devlin explains what happened, he just tells Fred that like her time was up or something along those lines. It was her time to move on. I don't know. And that was it. That's it. I would have thought this would be like a bait and switch type thing where it turns out, oh no, she's not actually dead and that he meant something else entirely. But no, that's not the case at all. Even if the old music teacher did pass away, it's never explained why Mr. Devlin just has her cat and her clothes with him. I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm overanalyzing this. The next day, Fred goes to school. Everyone starts praising him for bravely exposing Mr. Devlin as a vampire. He finds out that the music class is suspended and is instantly hit with guilt over essentially ruining Mr. Devlin's life. Stalking and desperately trying to get with a girl who very clearly doesn't care for him, and ruining a man's life by throwing false allegations against him being a vampire. Our hero, everyone. Our hero. People grew up with this guy as a kid. I grew up with this guy as a kid. This was a role model that I had as a kid. Because of the guilt that he feels for the live stream, he goes on a back and forth self-debate regarding whether he should delete the stream or not, in what is essentially a rehash of a scene from near the end of the first movie, where he debates on whether he should upload the fake party video that he and Bertha made online or not. He ends up deleting the stream, and alongside Bertha, comes up with his plan to have himself dress up as a vampire so that everyone could forget about Mr. Devlin and focus on Fred instead, or something along those lines. I don't know. It's a really stupid plan. Yeah, he might distract people from Mr. Devlin, but that won't change the fact that people wrongly think that he's a vampire now. That won't change the fact that his reputation among these students at this school is now permanently ruined thanks to Fred. What's gonna stop people from thinking that both Fred and Mr. Devlin are vampires? What's going to stop them from thinking Fred is faking himself being a vampire, while also thinking that Mr. Devlin actually is a vampire because of all the weird things in his house that Fred livestream that they don't know what they're actually supposed to be? It doesn't make any sense at all. It really doesn't. So anyways, after coming up with this plan, we get a montage of Fred preparing to disguise himself as a vampire, with Bertha helping. And once again, it is very reminiscent of the two fake party montages in the first movie. Thankfully, there is only one montage here, and it is fairly short, but it still feels much longer than it actually is. It still feels like it goes on for an eternity. It still feels like they just included this montage for no other reason other than to pad out the runtime. Midway through, Talia joins in on Fred and Bertha's plan. Wow, there is less than 20 minutes left of the movie, and now is when this character is finally important to the storyline. Now is when this character finally contributes something of importance to the storyline. Kevin is supposed to be babysitting Talia for the night. He goes outside looking for her, not knowing that she's with Fred and Bertha. He sees Mr. Devlin in his house carrying what appears to be a body. He drops the body body and starts cleaning up a sword, and so Kevin believes that he might be doing something to Talia, and he gets his friends to confront Mr. Devlin once and for all. As they stand in front of him, they see Fred's garage door open. Fred is dressed up like a vampire and is holding Talia, and rather than make fun of Fred for how ridiculous and fake looking his outfit is, Kevin is forced to put a wooden stake into Fred's heart in order to stop him and rescue Talia. He does exactly that. The rest of the bullies leave as they're scared. Kevin goes up to check on Fred, who he believes is dead. Fred scares Kevin away, and that fixes Mr. Devlin's reputation among the students at his school. Somehow. I'm so confused by this, I really am. The movie acts like Mr. Devlin is in on this plan, but there's no scene where Fred and the others recruit him for this plan. I feel like that would be a pretty important scene to include in the montage, but it's not there. Again, how does Fred trying to convince everyone that he's a vampire himself gonna convince people that Mr. Devlin is not a vampire? As soon as Fred comes out of the garage carrying Talia, Kevin just conveniently forgets about Mr. Devlin carrying this body and cleaning a sword inside of his house. I mean, obviously to us, to the viewer, this is obviously fake, but to Kevin it's like, what's stopping him from believing that this is still a real body, even if it's not Talia? He doesn't have anything to prove that this is like a fake body or whatever. He's still convinced that Mr. Devlin is a vampire. I don't know, okay? It's Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred, who actually cares about any of this stuff, honestly. The next day, Fred finds out that Mr. Devlin is moving away, despite everything that happened the night before. The movie ends with Fred's mom, who is once again still a complete non-character, just like in the first movie, going on this goodbye date with Mr. Devlin, and then Fred notices Mr. Devlin's reflection in the mirror is invisible, which means that he was a vampire all along. What are the odds of that, man? What are the odds? And then that's it, the movie's over. Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred is embarrassing, to say the least. While working on this video, I would read through different reviews of the movie on IMDb, and I would find a lot of people say that this movie is better than the first movie. Even if the review was negative, the reviewer would acknowledge that this was an improvement from the first movie, even if it was a very small improvement. Now, I'm not going to make a big deal about this. This isn't like with Lord of the Rings or whatever, where it's highly debatable as to which installment is the best one. We're talking about the goddamn Fred trilogy over here, okay? But I personally cannot see anyone thinking this is better than the first movie. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter because it's like the weird guilty pleasure vibe that I have for the first movie only applies to me. For most people, for people with good taste, both of these movies are complete garbage, and yet I look at these movies and I think, one is terrible, but it's like ironically enjoyable. The other one is terrible, but it's just f***ing insufferable. I felt nothing but embarrassment from this movie. I felt embarrassed watching the movie. I felt embarrassed thinking about how I watched this movie as a kid, probably over and over and over and over and over again. I felt embarrassed thinking about all of the friends and family members I had that I very likely forced them to watch this thing with me as a kid. Hell, I feel embarrassed just making this video. I feel embarrassed writing the script for this video. I feel embarrassed recording this video. This movie feels even more like low-hanging fruit than the first movie did somehow. The cheap made-for-TV vibe is felt much stronger in this one than in the first movie, which I understand that this is also a TV movie. Both of these movies, all three of these movies are cheap TV movies, and yet it feels even more blatant in this one than in the first movie. I have no idea why I'm reviewing this movie like I'm reviewing an actual proper movie. This isn't the first time that I've reviewed a low-hanging fruit movie, and it most certainly won't be the last time. I mean, I still have one more of these movies to review after all. But even then, I sometimes have to think to myself, while I'm recording this video, while I'm writing the script for this video, I think to myself, I'm reviewing Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred. What was I expecting out of Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred, honestly? This movie feels even more immature and childish than the first movie. If Fred as a character somehow didn't irritate me in the first movie, then he most definitely did irritate me in this movie. There are almost no funny moments in this movie, ironically or unironically. There were ironically funny moments, as well as extremely rare unironically funny moments in the first movie, and then in this movie, the funniest thing in it, both ironically and unironically, is a shirt that a character wears in one scene early on into the movie. Otherwise, I got a headache out of this movie. It is incredibly stupid and not in an ironically enjoyable way like the first movie. The fact that I watched the first movie a lot as a kid plays a part in the weird, extremely guilty pleasure perspective that I have for the movie. The fact that I watched this movie a lot as a kid brings me nothing but shame and embarrassment. I know I keep using that word a lot, but that is the perfect word to describe what I feel with this movie. This is exactly the kind of badly aged, joyless garbage that I expected the first movie to be. This is exactly what I was expecting. I watch this and I think, how the did I grow up with this as a kid? Which I did get those vibes from the first movie, but not to the same extent, because at least it was like ironic. I was able to embrace the stupidity of knowing that I watched this as a kid. And then with this, it's like, now the regret, now the shame and embarrassment of having watched this thing as a kid is felt even stronger in this movie. That being said, this is still far from the worst movie I have ever covered on this channel, which should tell you a lot right there. The first movie unironically being one of the better movies I've reviewed, and this movie being significantly worse, but not rock bottom territory, speaks volumes as to how atrocious some of the movies I've reviewed can truly be. But make no mistake, Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred is still a terrible movie regardless. A massive downgrade from the first movie, and I say that 100% unironically if you can believe that. Oh yeah, one more thing before I end off this video. For whatever reason, I still own the slipcover for this movie. I don't know why. Usually when I buy a movie and it comes with a slipcover, I just put the slipcover away in storage. Some people might ask why I don't just throw away the slipcover, and to be honest, I don't really know why. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right throwing away the slipcover. I don't know why. It just doesn't feel right. But anyways, I still own the slipcover for this movie, and it's a lenticular slipcover, meaning if you move it around, you can change the artwork. For this movie's case, you can either have Fred be in his normal attire or in his vampire disguise. I have no idea why I still have this in my possession. I guess when I was a kid, I thought, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever, and so I decided to keep it. I have no idea. It feels weird to me that there's probably tons of slipcovers for like better, proper movies that I've discarded and put away in storage, and then the slipcover for Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred over here is somehow still in my possession, but I figured I might as well show this off anyways. I have a Blockbuster copy of the first Fred movie, and I have the lenticular slipcover for the second Fred movie. I regret to inform you all that my DVD copy of Fred 3 Camp Fred does not have anything interesting or noteworthy about it, though I suppose this could be a sign that the worst has yet to arrive when it comes to these Fred movies. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Adios! Everyone has that one piece of media that they had as a kid. A movie, a cartoon, a TV show, a video game, you name it. And a lot of times, how you see that piece of media as an adult can vary. Maybe there's a movie from your childhood that you go back to and it still holds up. Maybe there's a game from your childhood that you go back to and it unfortunately hasn't aged all that well. Maybe there's a show from your childhood that you go back to and it hasn't aged all that well, but you knew in advance it wasn't going to age well. My recent journey across the Fred trilogy has left me with a wide variety of emotions regarding how I felt about these movies as a kid versus how I feel about them now. I thought it would be simple. All three movies would age badly. The end. And yeah, that is more or less what happened, but it's not exactly as simple as that. I loved the first movie as a kid. Yes, I am still very much embarrassed about that fact. And so I went into it all these years later expecting the movie to age badly, and surprise, surprise, it ended up aging badly, but I also found it to be ironically hilarious. The fact that it aged badly, I felt like added to the experience rather than take it away, if that makes sense. I loved the second movie, Night of the Living Fred, as a kid. Yes, I am still very much embarrassed about that fact as well, even more so than with the first movie, because wow, did this movie age horribly, and not even in like an ironically enjoyable way like the first movie. The regret and shame that I feel of watching these movies as a kid, I felt it significantly more for the second movie than for the first movie. And now we are at the third and final installment of the trilogy, Fred 3 Camp Fred, which, compared to the first two movies, I remember not liking this movie all that much when I was a kid. I don't know if I want to say that I hate this movie necessarily, but I would very rarely come back to this movie as a kid. I would almost never rewatch this movie, unlike the first two movies, which I would just endlessly rewatch. I think this could be in part because of when this movie came out. This movie came out in 2012, and I guess I was becoming too old for Fred by that point, even though I was still very much young at the time. I suppose I just gradually lost interest in Fred. I feel like most people did at the time. You know that one scene in Toy Story where Woody is looking around Andy's room and he sees all of the cowboy stuff in the room get replaced with like outer space astronaut stuff relating to Buzz Lightyear, whatever. Yeah, that's more or less what it was like. One minute, I'm on YouTube watching this funny kid with an annoying high-pitched voice. The next minute, I'm on YouTube watching a guy getting scared while playing a game where he's in a forest collecting pages and avoiding a faceless man, never once looking back on the kid with the high-pitched voice. It was like Fred was in this like weird in-between area in 2012 where he was still massively popular, but it was also very clear that his audience was moving on to other things. You know, that PewDiePie guy seems pretty interesting, I'm not gonna lie. I wonder how things will turn out for him in the future. I don't know. I doubt he'll ever be as big as Fred, to be honest. Okay, but getting back to the main point I was making, I didn't like this movie as much as a kid when compared to the first two movies, and that's how you know we're in for some serious garbage. I knew these movies would age badly, I went into these movies knowing they would age badly, and unsurprisingly, they ended up aging badly. But it's a whole nother story when you didn't even like one of these movies much as a kid. That's how you know we're reaching a level of badly aged that we have yet to see. Fred 3 Camp Fred begins with a musical number, and, you know, for as bad as these movies are, at least they never had any musical numbers in them, before this, of course. The second movie had a scene where Fred started singing, but it was only for like 20 seconds and that's it, and so it barely counts. This movie, on the other hand, starts with a full musical number. It's the last day of school before summer, and there's this whole song about how the best day of school is also the last day of school. Right off the bat, it becomes distractingly obvious that Lucas Cruikshank, the creator of Fred, is unable to play this character as well as he did in the previous movies. His voice feels much higher pitch in this movie when compared to the first two movies, and you can only imagine how fun and tolerable that made watching this movie feel. Being serious though, it feels so obvious watching this movie that the passion is no longer there. Whatever you want to say about the first movie, and believe me, there are a lot of things you could say about the first movie, it was clear watching it that Lucas cared about playing this character. There was a surprisingly large amount of dedication and passion that went into playing this character in the first movie, and then a lot of that went away in the second movie, but it's still there a tiny bit, and then it's just completely gone in this movie. Now it's become obvious that Lucas is too old to be playing this character, and it's honestly crazy to see how much he would change in such a small time frame from 2010 to 2012. This movie is incredibly immature and childish, much more so than the first movie, and maybe even the second movie actually, and so it just feels really off and depressing seeing this grown man play a character that's supposed to be immature and childish. Anyways, Fred is excited for the summer as he is going away to summer camp. More specifically, Camp Superior, the greatest summer camp in the world. Clearly, subtlety is not this movie's strong point, though I admittedly probably shouldn't have expected subtlety in a Fred movie, much less the third Fred movie. The next day, Fred heads downstairs with his luggage, excited to go to Camp Superior, only to find out that his mother, who is for the third time now a complete non-character, didn't sign him up for Camp Superior because it was too expensive, and instead signed him up for Camp... Fred's mom signs him up for Camp I Wanna Pee. Yes, that is the name of the camp. That is the name of the main setting of this movie. It's even proudly displayed on the front cover of the DVD. Fred's gotta go to Camp I Wanna Pee. The camp that's called Camp Superior is indeed superior to the camp that's called Camp Camp I Wanna Pee. Again, subtlety is not this movie's strong point. I'm sorry, it's so fucking stupid. It's so dumb that I can't help but laugh at it. It's like I fall victim to the idiotic, childish nature of it all. I should know better than to laugh at fucking Camp I Wanna Pee, and yet I can't help it. God damn it, gamut, I cannot help it. Fred is forced onto the Camp I Wanna Pee bus. There's like a solid 20 seconds of him screaming, and again, it is so obvious that Lucas is now too old for this role. He's unable to do Fred's iconic scream as well as he did in the first movie, which was again released just 2 years prior in 2010. I'm honestly amazed that like Lucas's voice isn't like permanently damaged from playing this character. Like if I watch like a modern video of his today, it's like his voice just sounds normal. There's nothing wrong with it. You'd think like playing a character whose whole thing is being loud and screaming and whatever, you'd think that would do some serious fucking damage to his voice, but surprisingly no. His voice is still fine. They arrive at the camp where we meet the camp's counselor, like the main leader of the camp, whatever. Floyd Spunkmeyer. Yes, Spunkmeyer. Why they decided to go with that last name, I have no idea. If you thought like Camp I Wanna Pee Pee made me fucking die of laughter, you could only imagine like I spent a long time just laughing at the fact that bro's last name is Spunkmeyer. Jesus, off to a great start with this movie. Off to a great start. Anyways, wouldn't you know it, Camp I Wanna Pee Pee is not a very good camp, and Fred absolutely hates it. It's like every single possible cliche you can think of. There's a scene where Fred is crying in the bushes and he wipes his tears away with leaves, and as it turns out, the leaves are actually poison ivy. Who could have seen that coming? He goes to the cafeteria to eat something, but they're serving this disgusting slop. Ew. Need to go to the bathroom? Your only options are these really nasty outhouses. You get the idea. I feel like this movie has a slightly greater reliance on toilet humor than the first two movies. The first two movies were surprisingly very light on toilet humor. They're not completely devoid of it, mind you, but there's not as much as one would have expected. This movie, though, there is noticeably more toilet humor in it, because clearly the name of the movie's main setting wasn't enough. At lunch, Fred meets up with these group of kids who each have their own gimmick, I guess. There's like this nerdy boy whose whole thing is science. There's a boy who never talks. There's a girl who's always eating. And there's a boy who digs a lot, and his name is Dig. I feel like I'm looking too deeply into this, but am I the only one that gets mildly racist vibes from the fact that the only black kid in the group is named Dig? That feels racist to me. I don't know why. I might be overanalyzing this, but that's just the kind of vibe that I get from it. Well, there we have it. All three movies in the Fred trilogy have something unintentionally racist in them. Isn't that wonderful? I feel like a broken record saying this, but it's so distracting seeing this grown adult Fred sitting alongside all of these like 13 to 14-year-olds. The childish, immature nature of this movie, and Fred as a character in general, just doesn't work anymore. He's too old for this role. Anyways, there's like these summer camp games that go on between Camp Superior and Camp I Wanna Pee Pee, and for the last 69 years, and no, I'm not joking, they actually say that this has lasted for 69 years in the movie. Camp I Wanna Pee Pee always loses to Camp Superior, and Floyd over here is convinced that this will be the year where Camp I Wanna Pee Pee finally wins, thanks to Hugh over here, who's like this athletic kid at the camp, the only person in the camp competent enough to participate in the games and give the entire camp any chance of winning over Camp Superior. Boy, it sure would be unexpected and unpredictable if something bad happened to Hugh that would prevent him from playing in the games, wouldn't it? A large majority of the movie is a Fred trying to escape from the camp. John Cena returns in this movie once more and tries to offer Fred advice, but is unable to do so due to the disgusting nature of the camp. And I'm not joking about that either. He just straight up tells Fred, "You're on your own." And that's it. Unlike in the first two movies, John Cena only appears in one scene in this entire movie. The unironic best thing about the first two movies, and he's only in one scene in Fred 3. He's not even able to save Fred 3. As if it wasn't already obvious enough that this was the worst movie of the trilogy. My favorite thing about this as well is that John Cena appears and receives top billing on the front cover of the DVD, making you think he'll play a big part in the movie, and then he's only in this one scene, and that's it. Talk about false advertising right there. What the hell am I talking about, actually? I see Lucas Cruikshank, I see Tom Arnold, I don't see John Cena anywhere on this front cover. What the hell am I talking about? I think I'm going crazy, guys. I think Fred 3 Camp Fred has officially driven me insane. A lot of this movie is just kind of loosely connected things that are strung together. There isn't really much of a plot in this movie, unlike with the first two movies. It's mostly just Fred hates this camp because it's weird and gross and disgusting, and then there are these games near the end, and that's it. For the most part, this movie is just things happen, and that's it. There's not really, like, much in the way of a storyline. There's this one scene where everyone is telling scary stories, and one of them goes on about a creature that haunts the woods called the Crocabaramoose. There's like this dream sequence where Fred is a camp scout, and the Crocabaramoose appears behind him, and there's an honest to God, he's right behind me, isn't he joke in this scene. And then we cut back to like the real world. Fred believes that the story is fake and ridiculous, and then one of the camp counselors appears behind Fred dressed up as the Crocabaramoose, and again for the second time he makes a he's right behind me, isn't he joke. And I think these are unironically the funniest jokes in the entire movie. Isn't that wild? The worst joke in Thor Love and Thunder is also the funniest joke in Fred 3 Camp Fred. Funny how things work out like that, huh? There's a scene where Fred is trying to find something to eat because he refuses to eat the slop that they serve in the cafeteria, and then he comes across these berries, and at first he's scared to eat them because he thinks that they could be poisonous, and then he eats them anyways, and then he starts hallucinating the Crocabaramoose, and the two of them start rapping together, and it's like, this honestly had the potential to be ironically enjoyable, but I think that this movie is so insufferably that I am unable to find this scene even ironically funny. It's like 3 movies in, I'm already exhausted watching these. Whatever, like, ironic enjoyment I got from the first 2 movies, it's just completely gone by this point. And so I can't even look at this and find it to be, like, haha funny in, like, an ironically stupid early 2010s way. Oh yeah, speaking of which, I completely forgot about this until I got to this part of the script, writing it down. But the early 2010s vibe that the first movie had, that is completely gone in the second movie, yeah, it's still completely absent in this movie as well. Is that really all that surprising, honestly? Is it really all that surprising? Fred comes up with this theory that the camp is secretly poisoning the kids, and that the group of kids that he met at the cafeteria at the beginning are complicit in this. He finds out that these kids have a secret underground lair known as the rat hole, and that there are these strange blue pills that are put into the slop, which causes the other kids to get sick, hence why there's often a large amount of kids lined up at the nurse's office. Fred also believes that Floyd is secretly a rat man who eats the brains of the kids that are poisoned, and yeah, this is more or less the same thing as in the second movie where he thinks his music teacher is a vampire. I mean, this subplot isn't all that prevalent in the movie, but still, this is like, it's the same thing as like, oh, he thinks this person is that, and he's gonna do this to these people, and then it's like, none of it's like true at all, none of it's real. It's like, it's so repetitive by this point. It's not even like ironically enjoyable. It's not even like I can embrace the stupidity of it. It's just, it feels weirdly depressing more so than in the first 2 movies. I don't know why, it just does. Eventually, Fred finds out that none of what he believes in is true, which is, what a shocker, huh? What a shocker. The rat hole is actually an underground hangout that the main kids have. The blue pills in the slop are so that it could have a little bit of nutritional value, and everyone lining up to the nurse's office is actually pretending to be sick, just because the camp has a hot nurse, and that's it. It's all very irrelevant and pointless. pointless. I feel like there's even less for me to say about this movie compared to the first two movies, because again, this movie has seemingly less of a plot than the first two movies. A lot of it is just things happen for the sake of happening. There's no real reason to care about anything that happens in this movie. I mean, you could say that for any movie at all, but it's like, it's such a weird thing where like I cared more about Fred trying to get with Judy in the first movie. I cared more about Fred trying to convince everyone that Mr. Devlin was a vampire in the second movie. For whatever reason, like, I cared more about that than I do anything that happens in this fucking movie, which is, I don't know why, it's just like that. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like that. Everything that happens in this movie just feels largely insignificant. A large chunk of the movie is just Fred hates this camp and he wants to get out of it. And then like near the end, there's like these games that happen. And that's it. That's the movie right there. This movie went by strangely quick for me. I don't know. I don't think anyone else will have that luxury if they were to ever watch this, God forbid. But this movie felt weirdly quick for me to get through. It's only an hour and 20 minutes. This is 2 minutes shorter than the first two movies. I guess it was just like midway through, I just became like numb to it. I just became like, yep, I sure am watching Fred 3 Camp Fred. I sure am doing this right now with my life. I can't believe it, man. I can't believe it. This movie just felt unusually quick to get through, and I don't know why. Even then, this is still the longest 1 hour and 20 minutes of my life, easily. Anyways, the summer camp games are quickly approaching. Fred convinces the other kids who are now his friends to enter the games, even though they believe that they will inevitably lose, and that's when we finally meet the camp superior team, in which, Fred's longtime rival Kevin is in Camp Superior, meaning Fred will have to face off against Kevin in the games. And again, this is like the 5th time I'm bringing this up, but it is incredibly distracting looking at how old these people are. The people at Camp Superior are like actual adults. Like, these look like people that go to college. And then, like, in comparison, besides Fred, the kids at Camp I Wanna PP are like actual kids. It's so fucking jarring to see. The first day of the games arrive, and everyone at Camp I Wanna PP believes that they'll be fine thanks to Hugh, and then Fred ends up injuring Hugh, meaning they'll have to play the games without him. Wow, who could have seen that coming? How original and unpredictable, truly. Unsurprisingly, Camp I Wanna PP loses to Camp Superior on the first day of the games. Later that night, everyone is at dinner completely bummed out at the fact that they're going to lose the games for the 70th time in a row. Fred convinces everyone to embrace the fact that they're losers and that they will always be losers. In Fred's words, Camp I Wanna PP is the best at being the worst. The next day, everyone starts using their strengths, weaknesses, I don't know, to start winning the games. The girl who's always eating wins a pie eating contest. The nerd uses science to concoct the perfect drink needed to create a massive big burp for a burping contest, etc. By the end of the day, Camp I Wanna PP manages to catch up with Camp Superior, and so, for the third and final day of the games, each camp has to perform a song about what makes their camp special, and whoever wins the song competition wins the summer camp games. Between the opening musical number, the brief rap scene with Fred and the Crocabera Moose, and the singing competition near the end of the movie, there are noticeably more songs in this movie than in the first two movies. Not enough for me to call it a musical, mind you, but still enough for me to acknowledge it nonetheless. This is definitely, like, it's like trying to be a musical. Not 100%, but it feels like it. You know, I was going to offer brief praise to these movies because it's like, yeah, they're terrible movies, but hey, at least they're not musicals. And then this third movie over here has to completely ruin that. That's wonderful. The final day of the summer camp games arrive. Camp Superior performs a rap song about their camp, while Camp I Wanna PP performs a song all about how they're losers, and they're absolutely proud to be losers. They completely embrace the fact that they're losers. They are proud of the fact that they are losers. And I regret to inform you all that this song kinda goes, admittedly, just a tiny bit. It's like a miniature banger. I'm sorry. Camp I Wanna PP wins the singing competition, and by extension, the games for the first time ever. Kevin throws a massive tantrum about it, which, again, it feels really awkward to watch because the actor playing him is like an actual adult by this point. He had this whole plan where he would shoot slop onto Camp I Wanna PP while they're performing in order to humiliate them. The machine doesn't work while they're performing, and then it finally works while Kevin is having his tantrum, sucking off his clothes, and we're almost done with this movie and trilogy. Thank God, man. The movie ends with Fred saying goodbye to his friends. I forgot to mention this as well, but there's like these brief scenes where we cut back to Fred's mom, and she's with this pizza guy, and the implication is that she might be dating this pizza guy. I don't know. I didn't acknowledge it until now, until the very end, because it's not funny, and it serves no purpose to the movie's plot, or lack thereof. Fred 3, Camp Fred, is easily the worst movie in the Fred trilogy, without a doubt. The fact that I didn't like this movie all that much as a kid, and would very rarely ever come back to it when compared to the first two movies, which I absolutely loved and would frequently rewatch them, was already a massive red flag that I would absolutely hate this movie upon rewatch. But oh my gamut, was I not prepared for how bad this movie truly is. This movie doesn't really have a storyline per se. I mean, it kinda has one, but it's so incredibly thin. A lot of it is just things happen for the sake of happening, because why the hell not? It is so obvious watching this movie that Lucas Cruikshank no longer has the passion for this character that he once had. It feels phoned in. Pretty much all of the acting feels phoned in. It's like nobody actually wanted to be in this movie. The first movie was mostly funny ironically, and on rare occasions, it was surprisingly funny unironically. The second and third movies are almost astonishing in how unfunny they are. It's like they each have one or two funny moments or things in them, and that's it. Again, there are two completely unironic, he's right behind me, isn't he, jokes in this movie, and they are somehow the funniest jokes in the entire movie. The name of the camp being Camp I Wanna PP regrettably makes me laugh. I should know better than to find something this idiotic and immature funny as a grown adult, but I can't help it, man. I can't help it. This movie reminds me of another movie from my childhood, Daddy Day Camp from 2007. In fact, I'm pretty sure these are quite literally the exact same movie. You have two different camps, a nice fancy camp and a crappy rundown camp. In Daddy Day Camp, there are all of these kids that are excited to go to the crappy rundown camp until they find out that the crappy rundown camp is crappy and rundown. Who would have thought? At first, they hate the crappy rundown camp, and then as the movie progresses forward, they realize, oh hey, the crappy rundown camp is pretty good actually. In the latter half of the movie, there's this competition between the nice fancy camp and the crappy rundown camp, and I wouldn't be surprised if in this movie, the crappy rundown camp loses to the nice fancy camp during the initial games, only to then start winning in the subsequent games, just like in Fred 3. And then Daddy Day Camp ends with the crappy rundown camp winning the competition. The end. I don't remember much about Daddy Day Camp besides the fact that I'm pretty sure Fred 3 might have unintentionally ripped it off. Apparently it's a sequel to an Eddie Murphy movie from 2003 that I have never seen before, only instead of Eddie Murphy, it's Cuba Gooding Jr. And instead of being a bad but probably unremarkable family comedy, it's one of the worst movies ever made, and one of the worst sequels ever produced, according to Wikipedia. Jesus fucking Christ, man. Now I'm even more curious to revisit this thing, seriously. Expect a Daddy Day Camp video in the nearby future, because why stop at the Fred trilogy, you know? I want to review more terrible movies that I would watch as a kid for some unknown reason. I can't believe Fred 3 Camp Fred would rip off such a beloved, cherished classic like Daddy Day Camp. I mean, just look at that amazing 1% Rotten Tomatoes score. That's how you know we'll be in for something truly amazing. Mario fans are over here complaining that the Super Mario Galaxy movie has a bad Rotten Tomatoes score. If only they knew the pain that us Daddy Day Camp fans have felt for almost 20 years. If only they knew. Oh yeah, one more thing before I end off the review. All 3 Fred movies were directed by 3 different people. The first movie was directed by, and I wish I brought this up in my review for the first movie, but I'm bringing it up now, that's all that matters. The first movie was directed by a man named Clay Weiner. No, I'm not joking about this. And besides Fred the movie, Mr. Weiner over here has directed absolutely nothing else. I guess there was like a short film that he made in 2017, but that's it. He has nothing else to his catalog. Maybe this is why the sequels are inferior to the first movie, because they lack that magic, that Clay Weiner magic, that made the first movie such an iconic experience, and it's completely missing in the second and third movies. The second movie was directed by John Fortenberry, who primarily directs comedy stand-up specials. Besides Fred 2, the only other actual movies he's directed are Jury Duty from 1995, starring Pauly Shore. I've never seen this movie, but it doesn't seem like it's a very good movie, and considering the fact that I also watched another Pauly Shore movie as a kid, that being the infamous Biodome from 1996, and I found it to be agonizingly awful rewatching it many years later. I can only imagine what Jury Duty over here must be like. On a side note, Biodome review coming soon as well. F*** it, we ball. And A Night at the Roxbury from 1998, which I have also never seen, and is also apparently not very good from what I've looked up. You know that one really old What Is Love meme from the late 2000s, where you have these like 3 guys bobbing their head in a car while listening to Hathaway's What Is Love? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that meme comes from this movie, so I guess that's something to bring up. John Fortenberry might have only directed 3 proper movies, but he has one of the most interesting filmographies I think I've ever seen. And finally, the third movie is directed by Jonathan Judge, who would also go on to direct several other cheap made-for-TV Nickelodeon movies, including, and I'm not joking about this either, the 2 live-action Loud House movies, A Loud House Christmas from 2021, and A Very Haunted Loud House from 2023. I don't know why I'm treating this like it's a big surprise. I don't know why I'm acting like, oh, this is a massive plot twist, you guys, can you believe this? You know, it's like, the worst movie in the Fred trilogy, and the live-action Loud House movies, all coming from the same director, isn't really all that surprising when you think about it. But again, it's something that I think is worth bringing up, and honestly, I don't know how else to end off this review of Fred 3 Camp Fred, as well as these reviews of the Fred trilogy in general. Thank fucking God I am done with these movies, seriously. This was quite a painful trip through memory lane, I'm not gonna lie. The embarrassment of watching these movies as a kid somehow got even stronger with each passing movie, genuinely. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios.